at the water's edge.
Here's the deal, like, there's so many other kids, there's so many other names, there's so many other teachers. I talked about one kid and 3 teachers. There's thousands of kids and thousands of teachers that have made that kind of difference in the lives of ordinary boys and girls. You know, so many others, faithful men and women. And I'm talking to many of you right now, faithful men and women who give it your all every day. Now, during the best of time, educators deserve our support and encouragement. Now, during the tough times like this, they deserve our patience and partnership. I cannot imagine what it was like to be a teacher last year. I can't imagine what it would have been like to work in a school at all last year. And even this year, there's still great uncertainty. I mean, you're being asked to create a game plan, and you're not even quite sure what the rules are yet. Now, educators, I just want you to hear this. Whether you're a principal or a paraprofessional, whether you're a coach or a counselor, whether you serve lunch or you sterilize learning areas, whether you're a teacher or a transporter. So as a parent, on behalf of the church and, you know, for the community, we just say thank you. You're investing in the next generation. You are making the world better one life at a time. You really are. We are pulling for you and praying for you. We will treat you well, and we will trust your leadership. We will give you the same grace that God gives us, and we'll encourage others to do the same.
Heaven thundered, and the world was born. Life begins and ends in the dust you form. Faith commanded, and the mountains move. Fear is losing ground to our hope in you. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. The impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Freedom conquered, and all our chains undone. Sin defeated, Jesus has overcome. Mercy triumphed in the third day dawn. Darkness was denied and the storm was gone. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. And the impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. And the impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Water's Edge. My name is Michelle Bonniwell, and I'm the Director of Kids Ministries here, and we are so glad you're joining us this Sunday morning. Now, if you've been here for a while, you know we have these little things called info pads. Love them or hate them, like Chad said last week, they are back. So as those make their way across the aisle, we encourage you guys to fill those out. That gives us an opportunity to know who is here today and also to connect with you and re-up your information. If you're joining us online, be sure to fill out an online connect card. You can do that at weomaha.com/connect. You'll find the tab right where you need it. Now, a lot of you guys may want to know how you can keep up with what's going on at the Water's Edge, aside from social media and the website. Well, we have two easy ways for you to do that. If you have your phone on you right now, you can pull it out and text We Omaha, all one word, to 313131. This will add you to our text alerts. You'll get those about every week, and it'll help you stay connected to everything going on here at the Water's Edge. Another great way is to subscribe to our emails. Craig sends out a weekly email that tells you everything you need to know about what's going on. You can do that by filling out the information in your info pads, or you can email info@weomaha.com and just put in the subject, I want to subscribe to emails, and we'll get you on that list. Some things we have going on this week and the next couple of weeks. This week is our youth kickoff. How many youth do we have here in the building? Yeah, well, we are excited to get started with you next week. It's going to be a great, big, fun time. You're going to play games, have some food, meet your leaders for the year. And parents, you guys are invited to be a part of that. So mark your calendars. That is this Wednesday. Another thing we have coming up is our baptism class. If you have a child that you're interested in being baptized or you would like to be baptized, we would like you to attend this class to learn more about baptism and also connect with other people here in the church. That is going to be Thursday, August 19th at 6:30 p.m. Another way to connect with people here in the church is Starting Point. At Starting Point, you'll be able to meet the church staff, ask questions, learn more about the church, and like I said, connect with new people. We're going to have our next Starting Point Sunday, August 22nd at 11:45. That's right after our 10:30 service. We'll be in the kids' large group room, and you can register for that at weomaha.com. Now, today is Communion Sunday, so if you did not grab a communion cup on your way in, just raise your hand, and one of our greeters will bring one to you. And at this time, I encourage you guys to stand as you're able and join AJ and the band in song.
And I searched the world, but it couldn't feel me. Man's empty praise and treasures of faith are never enough. You came along and put me back together. And every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing. Nothing is better than you. And I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. God of the mountain, it's the God of the valley. There's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing Sing it out with us. Great is your faithfulness. Great is your faithfulness, oh God. You wrestle with the sinner's restless heart. You lead me by still waters into mercy. And nothing can keep us apart. So remember your people. Remember your children. Remember your promise, oh God. Come on. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough for me. Your love and justice, God. You use the weak to be the strong. You lead us in the song of your salvation. And all your people sing along. So Jimmy jams for a little while. I'm going to read a scripture from Revelations. Revelations 2, 1 through 7. Write down my words and send them to the messenger of the church in Ephesus. These are the words of the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, the one who walks and moves among the golden lampshades. I know your deeds, your tireless labor, and your patient endurance. I know you do not tolerate those who do evil. Furthermore, you have diligently tested those who claim to be emissaries, and you have found that they are not true witnesses. You have correctly found them to be false.
I know you are patiently enduring and holding firm on behalf of my name. You have not become faint. However, I have this against you. You have abandoned your first love. Do you remember what it was like before you fell? It's time to rethink and change your ways. Go back to how you first acted. However, if you do not return, I will come quickly and personally remove you from the lampstand, from your palace, from your place. But you do have this to your credit. You, despite the deeds of the Nicolaitans and how they concede to evil, I also hate what they do. Let the person who is able to hear, listen to, and follow what the Spirit proclaims to all churches. I will allow the one who conquers through faithfulness, even unto death, to eat from the tree of life found in God's lush parish. This next song is called The Heart of Worship. Sing it out with us.
When the music fades, all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to bring something that's of worth that will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself, it's not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things have been. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. A king of endless worth, no one could express how much you deserve. Though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself, it's not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I made. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus.
Thank you for worshiping with us this morning. You may be seated.
Yeah, so for years, people have been asking me to do a sermon series on the book of Revelation. And I've resisted it for a few reasons. One is just, it's a very complicated book. It's the most complicated book in the Bible. But have you ever asked for somebody and they gave it to you and it actually wasn't what you wanted? Do you remember that movie? What was that movie where Jack Nicholson was in there and he says, you want the truth, you can't handle the truth? Yeah, so this is a prophetic book, so the sermon's going to be prophetic. If it's prophetic, it challenges us. But that's good. We grow when we're challenged. So Revelation is the last book of the Bible. It's written by John. So it was written when John was on an island of Patmos. This is in the Aegean Sea. It would be between Greece and Turkey, really about halfway between the two areas. Now, to say Revelation is different than every other book in the New Testament, it's kind of like saying eating cheese fresh from a dairy is a little bit different than vegan cheese. I guess many of you have not had vegan cheese because there's a big difference between the two. Make a mental note to change that metaphor for the second service. Just seriously, just go out and try some vegan cheese. You will be disappointed. So the reader of Revelation is going to immediately notice that the Jews are they're stubbornly holding on to a belief that their world is corrupt and almost beyond redemption. They also saw the possibilities of a future age. This age is going to be full of hope, it's full of peace, it's full of prosperity. Now the Jews, they did believe that change could never happen because of human activity. If things were to change, it was because of the agency of God. And you can see this belief throughout Revelation. So Revelation contains 3 sections. The first section is what we'll cover the next 5 weeks. There's 7 letters that John writes to 7 different churches. We will look at 5 of those letters. This is known as the pastoral or the epistle part of Revelation. It then moves into the prophetic part of the book, and then it concludes with the apocalyptic part of the book. We'll save those for later time. I've been here 15 years. If I make it 45 years, we'll cover all 3 of those sections. So Revelation is a beautiful book to read. It's full of obscure and extravagant imagery. Parts of it are very clear, parts of it are very difficult to understand. But in the end, and I wouldn't be up here this morning, in the end, Revelation serves the church by providing us a foundational theology. It gives us a consistent hope, that God's a God who keeps God's promises. And it gives us a call to evangelism and to share our faith as well, because there's so much at stake. So John ends up writing letters to 7 churches. These letters are found just in chapters 2 and 3. So I was at a lacrosse tournament this summer, and I was talking to one of the moms of one of the kids on David's team. And if you talk to someone for too long, it usually turns out that you end up talking about what you do for a living. She knows I'm a pastor. It's an occupational hazard. It's like they don't say, well, Freddie's dad's a lawyer and John's mom's a teacher. It's just people know what we do. And she told me she was a doula. Now, who in here knows what a doula is? Okay, so you're smarter than me because I didn't. So I said, so like D-U-L-A? And she goes, no, D-O-U-L-A. So you're going to have to excuse me. I don't know what you do. And she told me that she worked with families before childbirth, during childbirth, after childbirth. It sounds like a really cool job. So as I was reading Revelation, like the last couple weeks, really what I thought with these epistles to the 7 churches is that John is really acting like almost like a doula to the early church. And you just sense it as he writes these letters, like he's very caring and he's very compassionate. Like he's successful if they're successful, and he's pouring himself into them being successful. Now, the first letter that he writes is to the church in Ephesus. No surprise here. So the third letter, which we'll look at, I think, is next week, was to the church in Pergamum. So this is going to be the capital of the area of the province. But Ephesus was the city. If you had something to do, you went to Ephesus. Pergamum was the capital. It's kind of like Lincoln and Omaha. Like, Lincoln has like the Capitol building and Memorial Stadium, and Omaha has everything else. So that's what it's like. If you're from Lincoln, I apologize. Actually, I don't. It's true. So, all right. So you'll see that Ephesus is where the star is. So it's in Turkey. Greece is to your left. You see that Athens would be the major city in Greece. This is pretty much like the New Testament, what you'll see. You see, Paul wrote to the letter, the Romans. You'll see Israel, Jerusalem down the bottom right. So you can see that Ephesus is, smack dab in the middle of all these things. Now, it's got one of the greatest harbors in the world. At this point in human history. So Ephesus was unique. So this whole area is under the rule of the Roman Empire. Now, there's only a few of these, and Ephesus was one of them. Ephesus was a free city. So it's outside the bounds of the Roman rulership. It was within the area. But because the city was so big and so powerful, the Romans just basically said, okay, you can be there. We're going to leave you alone. You don't bother us. We won't bother you. So this comes into play throughout the letters, and we'll see that. So financially, so I want you to listen to this, right? So this is not about a church 2,000 years ago. I'm not preaching to those people. I'm preaching to us. So as I go through this, you're going to see some similarities between Ephesus and the United States. Ephesus was very financially prosperous because of all the trade that went through there. This city, compared to all other cities, had plenty of money. Ephesus had a great big stadium, and they had what would be kind of basically known as like the precursor to what we today call the Olympics. So there's entertainment, there was arts. They had a great big theater where there'd be concerts and plays, and people would come around from all over to watch these things. So it was a city of about 250,000 people. So it would have been the third largest city in the Roman Empire, only behind Athens and Rome. So predictably, it was a very diverse city. There's a lot of pagan witchcraft that went on there. There's a lot of people that were just trying to make it through the day. Now, because it was a free city, one of the interesting things is if the criminals could escape, where do you think they went? They went to a free city. Many of them went to Ephesus because it was easy to get there. Because at this point then, they were outside of the rule of the Romans who were looking for them. So there's many people that went to Ephesus. There was high crime accordingly, as you can imagine. So as we look at Ephesus, it provided a very daunting and a very challenging soil for the seeds of Christianity. But I got to tell you this, Christianity in Ephesus had some of its greatest triumphs. So Paul tells us or Acts tells us that Paul spent more time in Ephesus than any church he planted. So Acts tells us, watch out. Remember the 3 years I was with you, my constant watch and care over you day and night, and my many tears for you. So Paul would have stayed here for a long time. He went to some of the places for a few weeks, maybe a few months, and got the things going, and he took off. He knew this church was going to be significant because of where it was located. So he spent a lot of time here. He spent a lot of energy here. He spent a lot of money here. So chapter 2 begins. Write this letter to the angel of the church in Ephesus. This is the message from the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, the one who walks among the 7 golden lampstands. So you can see like the rich imagery has already started here. These are new words to the Bible. They're being introduced for the first time in the last book. So the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, that is Jesus. So it is actually Jesus who is directing John to write these letters. That makes these letters prophetic. These are not John's words. These are words directly from Jesus that John is merely scribing. Now, the lampstands in this text is the metaphor for the church. John's encouragement is that, and like this is for us. It's for all of us. You know, John's encouragement is that Jesus holds us and he still walks with us. You know, that we're not alone. You know, Christ didn't come and die and get resurrected and leave us abandoned. Christ came to the world, he died, he was resurrected, and he remains with us. Jesus even tells himself, like the last words he says in the Gospel of Matthew is, and remember that I'm with you always until the end of the age. So John has a lot of good things to say about the church in Ephesus, and there was a lot of good things to say about them. He says, I know all the things you do. I've seen your hard work and your patient endurance. And I know you don't tolerate evil people. You have examined the claims of those who say they're apostles but are not. And you have discovered that they're liars. So this is how you start off, like, communication is, like, through encouragement. You know, so, and he does this. He praises them for their hard work. He said, you know, you don't tolerate all the evil that's going on around you, and I respect that. You know, following Jesus in first century Ephesus was difficult, just like following Jesus today in 21st century America can be quite difficult. Now, Jesus was grateful for their patience and their endurance, so Paul was long gone. You know, so the church planner had left. You know, the one who started the church, like the one that they all looked up to, the one that they looked to for direction and guidance, he was gone. You know, they had some setbacks, obviously. They had some challenges, obviously, but they kept at it. You know, they're followers of Jesus, and followers of Jesus keep at it, and Jesus admired them for that. So Jesus gives them further encouragement. You have patiently suffered for me without quitting. Now, this is a cultural thing we just got to think about. So today, in the United States, in 21st century, we don't like to suffer. We try to avoid suffering. So look at our vocabulary. Like, we go to sedation dentist. We take painkillers. We visit convenience stores. We eat comfort food. We practice retail therapy. Jesus did not avoid suffering. As you read the 4 Gospels, there is nowhere in there that he avoided suffering. In fact, at the end, when he knew he was going to suffer the most, he prayed and he said, God, I pray that you'll take this cup from me, but if it's your will, give me the strength to continue. And here's why. Jesus welcomes suffering because he knows that growth best happens and grace is best experienced, not in prosperity, but in suffering. He affirms their willingness to sacrifice. He affirms their willingness to suffer because he knew that there's going to be blessings on the other side of these sufferings, that there'll be blessing on the other sides of this sacrifice. Now, Satan tells us lies all the time, and one of them is that you're not strong enough to withstand the storm, so avoid suffering. Now, here's what I want us to say to Satan next time he says that to us. He says, you're not strong enough. The devil says that you're not good enough to take the suffering. You just look at the devil and you say, I love your eggs, but I'm going to trust God on this one. Okay, some of you are going to get that joke later, I promise. Deviled eggs, never mind. 0 for 2. I'm trying to inject some comedy in this because it's actually not the most uplifting message until the end. You should have come 2 weeks ago. The whole place was laughing. Now, let's do this. Have any of you ever had somebody tell you this following sentence? We need to talk. Anybody? So how'd that work out for you? Yeah, so Jesus, John, the author, the speaker, they said, okay, you're doing all these really, really cool things. You don't put up with evil, you fight hard, you're willing to suffer, you're willing to, you don't quit, but we need to talk. So in verse 4, he says, I have a complaint against you. You don't love me or each other as you first did. So for all of you who wanted the sermon series on Revelation, here you go. Jesus has a severe indictment against the church. He says, you're doing a lot of right things. You're doing some really good things, but you're not doing the most important things. You're doing a church that's based on guilt and not one that's based on grace. You've fallen away from your first love, and that needs to be corrected. So what's going on here is they're practicing Christian ethics. They see the evil and they resist it. They see some opportunities to do good and they do it. They suffer for the cause of Christ. Like, that's the ethics that gets them there. That's really the what, is like what they're doing. But where's the why? That's what Jesus is asking them. The why is the reason why you do these things. The reason why you do the what is because of the love of God and the love of God alone. Jesus knows the only way the church will continue is through a compelling why. And the why is because God created us. The reason why is because God brings us into the world. The reason why is because God walks alongside of us now, and the reason why is because God will save us forever. Now, the culture of humanity is so much different than the kingdom of heaven. It was that way in Ephesus 20 centuries ago, and it's that way here today. Now, think about this. We work, and we earn, and we deserve. The aim is to become self-sufficient and comfortable. Now, God's kingdom is about receiving. It's about accepting. It's about being grateful. It's about being fully dependent upon God and incredibly faithful to God. We have a lot in common with the Ephesians. Like the Ephesians, I believe that God is asking us to return to our first love. Now, the Ephesians know this stuff, and so should we. They got a letter years before this by another guy. I talked about him earlier, Paul. Paul is the one who wrote the book of Ephesians, or the letter to the Ephesians. And Paul says in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, they knew this, and you know this because I've probably talked about this one verse more than I've talked about any other verse since I've been here. This is the foundation of Christianity. This is the verse that Martin Luther read when he realized that we're saved by grace. It's not what we do, it's what's already been done. So Paul writes to the Ephesians early in the letter, for it is by grace that you have been saved through faith. It's not from yourselves, it's the gift of God. We don't earn it, we don't deserve it. We can only accept it and receive it. This is our first love. One day you were God's idea. One day God brought you into the world. God walks with us still, and God will be with us forever. Now, here's the challenge for the Ephesians, and here's the challenge for us. Don't love being right. Don't love being secure. Don't love being comfortable. Don't love being better than others. Don't love having more than others. Don't love having control over others. Don't love being on the winning side. The counterfeit gods that exist today in this world are things like power and money and sex and sports and stuff and comfort and reputation and being on the right team. Now, these are all going to make promises that they simply cannot deliver in the end. For it is by grace that you've been saved through faith. This is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God. Then he continues in verse 9. Not by your works. It's not what we do so that no one can boast. It's not by your works. It's not by your words. It's not by knowing right and wrong. It's not by doing right and wrong. It's by receiving and accepting and being grateful and being humble. Knowing who God is and knowing who you are. Now, the Ephesians know what comes next, and most confirmation classes, when I do the sermon, I will put this verse in here because I believe that the next verse is a foundational verse of the Christian faith. For you're God's masterpiece. Like, you are God's masterpiece. I am, you are, we all are. Created in Jesus Christ to do good works, prepared in advance for us to do. I want to show you something. I'm going to show you the church of Ephesus. And I'm going to show you the church that Jesus wants. So what Jesus saw with the church of Ephesus was a church that was based upon guilt. They were doing the right things, but they had lost their first love. So religion was an act of guilt for them. You know, we're supposed to hate evil. We're supposed to do good things. So you know what happens to that church? Like, you know, they had the first love, and there was a lot of deposits that were made. The grace fills this up. The guilt drains it. You know, so they did some cool things. They suffered. You know, they kept pouring themselves out. And Jesus knew this wasn't sustainable. You got to keep refilling as you pour yourself out, or eventually you're going to become empty. Have you ever heard that word used in our culture today, empty? See, I have. I think a lot of people describe themselves as empty, and it's because we forgot our first love. There's only one who gives us fullness. Now there's another church I want to talk about. This is the church that's based on grace. So what happens here is that we return to our first love. Now, both these canisters start out half full of water, half empty, whatever your worldview is. But this church is returning to its first love. Now, if you keep getting fuller and fuller, what happens is you're saved by grace through faith. You're God's masterpiece, created to do good works in this world. You're not giving the good works out of guilt and dryness and emptiness. You're giving these good works out of grace because that's what you're created to do. I just want to wake up those who are sleeping. Well, I hope this doesn't leak, which it does, but it's cool. So what happens then? Well, it happens, I'll just use this as a metaphor right here. It's the overflow. Yeah, you get so full. You get so full that what happens? Like, you just overflow. You overflow, and there's nothing else you can do but do the good works because you've been saved by grace through faith. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be part of a religion, a belief, a faith process that is based on guilt and me becoming empty and eventually dry. That's not sustainable for me, and it's not good for the world. I want to be part of a faith that overflows. And as I fill up, I have no other choice but to do the good works that God has created me to do. So John Wesley was the founder of the Methodist Church in the UK in the 1700s, and I love what he said at the end of his life. My fear, this is what I think about the water's edge. When I started this 15 years ago, I knew this quote when we did this. My fear is not that our great movement, known as Methodist, will eventually cease to exist or die one day from this earth. That's not the fear. My fear is that our people will become content to live without fire, the power, the excitement, the supernatural element that makes us great. What Wesley is saying is, I don't want this to become us. What I want is, do this. I can improvise. What I want is this. I want us to overflow and then give this living water, these good works, to the world. Now, 70 years later in Denmark, Kierkegaard attacked the Danish church. You can Google the book. The book is called The Attack on Christendom. So what he saw going on was actually not Christianity. He saw Christendom, and he saw Christendom as like this lazy, polite religion that it was socially acceptable to do. The church called themselves Christian without themselves being committed to Christ. Like Revelation, Kierkegaard himself sought to introduce Christianity to Christendom. He says, if anything is to be done, one must introduce Christianity to Christendom, to reintroduce Christ to the church. Now, it didn't happen. If you go to Copenhagen today, it's this beautiful city of 2 million people. There are a handful of churches that remain. They are relics of the past. There's a few of them that are beautiful, like old cathedrals, and they're tourist attractions now. They're not vital congregations anymore because Christ was not introduced to Christendom. What happened is they emptied and they emptied and they emptied until they had no more. They said, I don't need this anymore. It's too much work. I don't need this guilt in my life. There's better ways. So welcome to 2021. Like the Ephesians, we have sports venues and concert halls to entertain us. We have extravagant houses that we live in. Actually, some of us have very nice houses that our cars live in. Some of you had so many clothes in your closet that you actually had to take a few minutes to decide which one of them you're going to wear this morning. Some of us have so much food at the end of the week that we have to throw some of it away because it's not good anymore. We live in a divided culture with counterfeit gods. Exhibit A would have been the school board meeting on Monday night. Did you see that one? Did you see the reaction to it? That's like Exhibit A for what it means to be divided. There was an earthquake in Haiti yesterday. It was a violent one, and thousands of people died. There'll be a kid from Omaha who's embarrassed to walk into his classroom because his mom couldn't afford to buy him school supplies. Meanwhile, Christians continue to argue publicly over things like race and immigration. We have to go to an annual meeting every year for Methodist clergy in the Midwest, Kansas and Nebraska, and I had to look this up this morning because every time I see this, it just grieves me. In 2019, in July, we closed 9 churches. In 2020, we closed 14 churches. In 2021, we closed 15 churches. In fact, frankly, I don't blame people sometimes for not coming to our churches because we're no better than the world around us because we have fallen away from our first love. We have emptied everything that there is to empty, and we're no longer living from the excess and the overflow that God provides to us. So John continues Jesus' words. John's the scribe. Look how far you've fallen. Turn back to me and do the works you first did. If you don't repent, I'll come and I'll remove your lampstand from its place among the churches. And I just told you that there was 9 churches and 14 churches and 15 churches that closed. And Jesus isn't making a threat here. He's just going to say, if you try to have this type of church that's built on guilt, and you've fallen away from your first love, it's not going to work. You know, if you choose to put me first, and if you choose to return to me, then you can live out what it means to be God's masterpiece, because you're created to do good works, and you're going to share from the abundance of the overflow. You know, so my weekly Sabbath is on Saturday morning. It's really the one time a week I just say I'm not available. So usually I go hiking at Platte River State Park. Yesterday was just a 3-hour walk through the woods with a friend, and we're coming back from the park. We actually went on 80 over the bridge and through Gretna to Harrison Street, and I live a mile or two that way. And we drove by here, and I saw overflow. I was proud of the cross that was up on the building because the people were living from the overflow. I saw a bunch of people like out in the parking lot. They were building beds because they're saved by grace through faith. Because they're God's masterpiece, who are created to do the good works that God leads us to do. Yeah, I saw a playground, and I saw a shelter. This money was given by private funds. You know, there's a woman who paid for the shelter because she gets the overflow. She knows what it's like to be saved by grace through faith. You know, she knows that she's been blessed. You know, she's not living from this model of guilt that leads to emptiness, but of grace that leads to fullness and solidarity and sharing. You know, the same is true with the shelter. The same is true with the sprinklers and the grass and the trees that are going to be going in a few weeks. This is the overflow. It's who we can become. And anyone, like in verse 7, anyone with ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he is saying to the churches, and that is return to your first love. Don't try to do this on your own. Don't try to live this life guided by guilt. You know, Jesus says himself that he has come to the world so that we can experience his love and his abundance in all of its fullness, not emptiness, fullness. To everyone who is victorious, those who live in the overflow, Jesus promises, I will give fruit from the tree of life in the paradise of God. So what Jesus is saying is like you can choose to live one of two ways. This is option A. Eventually, you're just going to run out. You're going to be full of guilt, you're going to be empty, you're going to be tired, you're going to be purposeless. Or you can live from the overflow. You'll return to your first love. And because you do that, I'm going to fill you up. And because I fill you up, you're going to have so much to give because you're my masterpiece. I have created you to do good things, but you can only do these good things long term when you put me first. So Jesus was near his own death. This had been years before this book of Revelation was written and this letter to the Ephesians was written. And Jesus is with his friends, and they're sharing their last meal together. So Jesus, he takes the bread, he blesses the bread, and says, friends, this is my body that is given for you. When you eat of this, do so and remember me. So we're going to take communion now, and we'll just kind of do this as the process. So on your communion cup that hopefully you've received, if you don't have one, just raise your hand high, and one of our servers will come and serve you this morning. what I want you to do is take off that little thin layer on the top. Sometimes it's kind of tricky. We do have someone over here on the right-hand side. I'm going to pray, and then I'll give us further instructions. So, Lord, this bread is bread that you have given to us. Lord, this is bread of abundance. You give us life. You give us resources. You give us fulfillment. You give us fullness. You have created us as your masterpiece so that we can do good works in this world. Jesus, you didn't come to the world to fill us with guilt. You came to the world to fill us with grace. And Lord, let that grace abound in us. Let that grace overflow in us. Lord, let us return to you. Let us make you our one true and our one holy passion. And Lord, when we put you first, you promise that you'll give us everything else. You give us all that we need. And God, we thank you for that. So friends, this is the body of Christ. Take, eat, and remember that Jesus is the God of abundance.
Give me one pure and holy passion. Give me one magnificent obsession. Give me one glorious ambition for my life, to know and follow hard after you. To know and love hard after you. To grow as your disciple in the truth. This world is empty, pale and poor, compared to knowing you, my Lord. Lead me on and I will run after you.
So later, Jesus took the wine, he blessed it, he gave thanks, and he said, "Friends, this is my blood. It's the blood of the new covenant that has been poured out for you in the forgiveness of your sins. When you drink of this, do so in remembrance of me." And I pray that as we drink this morning, that we remember that we are forgiven. Remember that Jesus has saved us through faith by his grace. So take and eat and remember that you are forgiven.
Give me one pure and holy passion. Give me one magnificent obsession. Give me one glorious ambition for my life, to know and follow hard after you. To know and follow hard after you. To grow as your disciple in the truth. This world is empty, pale and poor, compared to knowing you, my Lord. Lead me on and I will run after you. Lead me on and I will run after you. Lead me on and I will run after you.
Let us pray. God, help us to return to you, our first love. Lord, help us to return to the heart of worship. Help us to know and follow hard after you. Lord, give us that one pure and holy passion that will define our lives. And God, help us not to be people that are defined by grace and emptiness. Help us to be defined by help us not to be defined by guilt and emptiness. Help us to be defined by grace and by fullness and by abundance. So, Lord, as your people now in one voice, we come and pray the prayer that you taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Well, thank you guys all for joining us this morning. There are study guides for this new series on the way out if you'd like to grab one. And I pray that as we leave here, we return to our first love and we go out to be people who kind of look like this wet stage right now, that we remember our love for God, and that overflows and spills out into everyone that we meet and everything that we do. So let's go out to overflow in this world. Amen.